So welcome to Tactical Master YouTube channel, and in this video series I am going to discuss about some essential or basic checkmating patterns you must know, which is called mating motifs. And in this lesson we shall study various typical mating motifs, which is called some checkmate patterns. This should enable you to exploit any such opportunity in practical play. So the first mating motif or the first checkmate pattern we are going to discuss in this video series is mate along open lines. So this is a very well known and important motif. It involves two major pieces, rook plus queen or two rooks, operating along open files or ranks and forcing the opposing king to the edge of the board. Since it has no way out, the king is mated there. So if you can't understand what I have said just now, let's go to a practical game played between two players in 1900s. Okay, this is the game. In this first game, we have white to move and win. Oh, I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about this puzzle and try to find the best move continuation. And feel free to pause this video and find it. Now I'm going to tell you what's the theory and what's the answer for this puzzle. So the answer is rook to d8. Why? In this rook d8, it's a check. King has three options to escape, and if king goes to h7, we have rook d7 check, which forces king to go to the square h6, and it's made by rook h8. So if king goes to the h7, it's a simply rook h8 mate, and in this position if king goes to g7, we have the same d7 check, and now king has two options. If king goes to h6 like was previous, we have rook h8 mate. So if king goes to the f6, we have rook f8 check, which forces king to escape to the e5 square. Now white have a rook check, which means rook e8 check. So by this check, king has now two options, which is f4 square and f6 square. If king goes to the f6 square, it's simply made by rook e6. So because of that, if king goes to the f4 square, now we have the rook d4 check, and now the only square that king has to go is king g3. After king g3, we have a pretty beautiful checkmate by moving rook to e3. So it's pretty easy and pretty simple checkmate. So if we go back to the previous position, we have this, and we have just discussed what is going on with h7 and g7. Now we have to discuss what is the variation with king f7. So if king f7, we have the usual rook d7 check. So after that, king has to move the f6. So this is just the same variation like the previous one, and king has to move f6. After that, rook checks and king escapes, rook checks, king escapes, and after that rook checks and king escapes, and rook e3 checkmate, just the previous variation. And here we have open files and ranks, or we have the open d file and open e file, and we have the 7th rank open in this variation. I hope that you guys understand what's the theory behind this game, and let's get into the next example game played by two international chess players, and let's discuss what the next game would be. So this is the second position or second game. In the real game, white plays e5 and black resigns. Why black resigns? Let's discuss. So after the move rook e5, it's threatened to mate by rook g5 check and q g7 checkmate. So to prevent that mate, black has few options. If black goes for queen c7 with the intention of preventing or guarding these squares, now still white has rook g6 check, not rook g6, rook g5 check. Now if queen moves to g7, it's a simply checkmate by queen cut g7. Because of that, king has to move somewhere else. So if king moves to the h7 square, we have a mate by queen g6 check, and it forces king to the retreat to h8, and now we have a beautiful mate of rook h5. Not it's really made, but queen can go to this square, and it's made by queen cut h7. So because it's the one main variation what can happen in this position. So if black moves queen to c7, it's just a losing position for black, and it's just a winning for white. And black has some few other options. If we take a look at black can move his rook to d7 with the idea of safeguarding the 7th rank, h7, g7, f7 and e7 squares. So likewise previous, we have the rook g5 check. After that, king has to move to the h7. After that, we have, after king moves to h7, we have a beautiful mate of not to queen h6, and we have queen g6. So after that, king moves to h8 and rook moves to g5 check. So after rook goes, and it's mate. So in this position, if we take back, black has nothing left on his hand to prevent the checkmate. Of course black has few moves, but they are not strong. So we can take a look at the other option. So if we think that if black moves to his rook to f8, and it's also meaningless, it's the same checkmate pattern here, check, and here and mate. So I hope you guys understand what is it look like mate upon open line, mate along open lines. And I have a simple puzzle or exercise for you, and take your time and solve the puzzle and comment in the comment section what the answer is. And goodbye all of you, and see you in the next video. So this is the puzzle, and try to find the answer. Goodbye.